I'm going to discuss the Pacific Northwest, focusing on some primary sector activities, but then also relate that to the origins or essentially why these prominent cities came to be, chiefly Portland, Seattle, and Vancouver. So we see Portland. Let's go ahead and begin with Portland. Look at Portland, contrary to Seattle and even Vancouver, Portland benefits, and it's originally, as it got its name, Portland, but its prominence early on was because of its location at the end of the Columbia River here. And the Columbia River works its way around, and it actually comes from eastern Washington and works its way. So Seattle's actually separate. If we think about the mountain range coming right through here, it's separate in terms of its river valley from much of the rest of the state. So even the Columbia River even starts up here in British Columbia, up in Canada. So essentially what we have is we have a big old river valley that is essentially served by Portland here. So let's just go out. What are they, what are the primary sector activities? Up in the mountainous areas, you got a little bit more natural resources, mineral resources. You get down here, you get a little bit more agriculture, especially in these low-lying areas. You can see these low-lying areas are dotted with farm fields. A lot of these farm fields have recently benefited from the construction of the Grand Coulee Dam. The Grand Coulee Dam, which is located right here, very clearly you can see this dammed up river. Essentially what that's done is it's provided irrigation, as it's dammed up river, it's provided irrigation for this particular area out here. So now they're growing things. So actually the agricultural industry has kind of thrived in this particular area of Washington State because of the construction of this dam. So they're growing things you see in the Great Plains, a lot of wheat, sugar beets, a lot of the same things we saw there in the North Dakota, northern Great Plains area. A little bit farther, see a little bit more green as the Columbia River works its way around. In this particular area, a lot of apples. And so a lot of apples, a lot of wheat, also a little bit of wine. It's a little bit more diversity here. You can see the color is a little bit more greener than the more northern areas of the Columbia River. And then eventually the Columbia River works its way through here and connects with Portland. Now, Portland benefits from that particular river valley and all the various agricultural products that historically, but still to the day, utilize the Columbia River to move product from the interior to the exterior. But that's more of an old tradition because of the role of railroads. But nonetheless, we also have the Willamette Valley, River Valley, which connects here. This is very agriculturally productive as well. So here what you've got a lot of strawberries, turf, so sod, along with some wheat, along with some grapes, i.e. a little bit of a wine industry here. It's a little bit more diverse in terms of the types of stuff that can be grown here. And of all the coastal areas of the Pacific Northwest, by far the most agriculturally productive. You can really see that just on this aerial map here. Further, you can see more evidence of that timber industry. Look at that. That's that checkerboard pattern very clearly shown out here. Here we have what's called the southern tip of the Silicon Forest, that high-tech area from, let's say, Eugene to Portland up to Vancouver. Now let's go up to Seattle. Seattle, you can see not much agricultural areas throughout here, and so that checkerboard pattern is very clear indication of timber. What do I mean by that? And so what happens is they clear a forest. You don't want to essentially clear it all, because if you're in the timber industry, the logging industry, that's your resource. And so essentially what they've done is over time they've gotten good at clearing areas, then moving on, and so to keep it so that the wildlife still kind of isn't completely disrupted by a huge swath or a huge, big line or area all of a sudden being wiped out. They kind of do this leapfrog checkerboard pattern in terms of clearing forested land. And you can see that, like I said, throughout much of this particular area. And so once again, tying in the primary sector activities to the location of these key urban areas. And so Portland over time, the timber industry also was very crucial. And so this timber essentially makes its way to Portland, where then shipped off wherever it might be, oftentimes to Asia. So we zoom into Portland here. We can kind of see its location. It kind of makes sense. The confluence of these two rivers, the Columbia River and the Willamette. Also, it's kind of got this physical feature right through here, kind of this rugged feature that also kind of adds to the density of the dense urban area that is Portland. All right, and so let's now go to Seattle. Like I said, we're going to go through each of these urban areas. And so Seattle, Tacoma, very narrow area. So primary sector activity, very much logging. There is some agriculture, but it's mostly serving the local markets. So it's like dairy, a little bit of apples, a little bit more, a variety of crops. Once again, it's not really being exported to markets. It's not being going out to Asia. It's for the most part serving the local market, because this is kind of an isolated area. Like once again, it's isolated from the Columbia River, but it's just isolated because of the mountainous areas and the rest of the Great Plains and all that's essentially a half a continent away. So if we look at Seattle, its key industry, I can zoom in. There's the airport, and just north of the airport is Boeing. So Boeing is located right here next to another airport. There's Boeing's headquarters right here, former headquarters, I should say. And so we can also see, Seattle, its prominence as a port, container port, moving stuff, timber, products, moving it and sending it outward somewhere else. And then we look at Seattle, it eventually merges up with Vancouver, and you can really see how Vancouver is actually spilling over into the United States. And so right here is, come on Google, right there is the line that separates the United States from Canada. So you can see how Vancouver is spilling over into the United States, into Washington. But if we look into the aerial view, Vancouver is kind of a flat lowland area, and it's at the mouth of the Fraser River. And so once again, kind of a theme in the case of both Portland and Vancouver is their location at the end of a river. So definitely more prominent there in Portland than Vancouver, and definitely to a lesser degree Seattle, which really doesn't have that many rivers flowing in there. It's just kind of the location at the Puget Sound here. Victoria was originally the key area of Western Canada in terms of the British holdings over here on the Pacific, so that's why the line just doesn't go straight across. The British, bargained. They wanted to make sure they kept Victoria, but eventually over time Vancouver actually became more prominent. Vancouver being located here in this lowland area, this big large area that was historically agricultural, to a certain degree still is. There are some pea farms, the pea being the little green little vegetable, but up in this particular area also, its location at the mouth of the river. Victoria also, kind of rugged, not really a lot of area for growth, where Vancouver, as you can tell, overwhelmingly a lot of area for growth, and it's still growing, but very high dense. And so we can see Vancouver. I guarantee if I zoom in here, haven't tried yet, I guarantee I'm going to see a lot of container ships, and boom, there it is. All these ships are essentially either moving in or moving out from Vancouver. So this is once again, Canada's port to Asia. It's definitely its most western, most prominent city.